Hey guys, it's Becky with the good hair, and I wanted to talk today and revisit a topic I had talked about in my very first video ever here on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description below so you can see that pretty poorly made video, but I kept it up just because I still agree with a lot of the things I said in that video. And the video in question is me talking about skinny shaming and how it seemed to be at the time pretty frequent within the body positivity movement. And the body positivity movement has progressed over time, and in the years that have passed, it's gained even more popularity, especially on Instagram. It's everywhere, and I think in theory, I think it's a really good idea, and obviously I agree with it. I think being positive in our bodies is a positive thing, but I do still think that there are problems within the movement, and I want to read a couple comments that I saw the other day on a body positivity account, and this kind of reiterates what I had said in my video from years ago. I think it's a problem that these kind of comments are still within the body positivity movement, and I just want to give my opinions on it. So the person runs a body positivity account, and she posted a picture of several different women and tried to illustrate the women's levels of thin privilege. And do I personally think thin privilege is a thing? Sure. What is thin privilege? Thin privilege is something that's argued to be pretty similar to white privilege. And do I agree that white privilege is a thing? Yes. White privilege is something we have documented evidence of. We have statistics to back it up. We have social experiments that have been done to prove that white privilege is a thing. When you have two resumes that are the exact same except for the names, and when it's a black sounding name versus a white sounding name, the white sounding name gets callbacks way more, even though it's the exact same resume, just based on the name that is on the resume. That's an example of white privilege. And white privilege is obviously something that exists in this country. We can see it, of course, in police brutality. Cops nationwide treat white people differently than black people. Black people are incarcerated way more for drug use and for drug dealing than white people are. Even though they use drugs at similar rates, deal drugs at similar rates, black people are incarcerated more. That's an example of white people in that instance having white privilege. It's documented, we know it's real. And anyone who tries to say otherwise is being ignorant. And do I think that thin privilege to a certain extent exists? Yes. Thin people are treated differently than more overweight people. However, do I think that thin privilege exists to the extent that it exists with white privilege? People might be treated a little bit differently, but it's not something systematic that's keeping overweight people down, and thin people are just privileged in these ways or anything like that. I don't really see it that way as concrete, and I don't think it's as dramatic. It's not as dramatic as white privilege is. And I do think it's a little bit insulting to try to equate thin privilege with white privilege when black people have been oppressed for centuries and have been systematically treated as lower class citizens for centuries in America, specifically in this country. And it's offensive to try to make it seem like people who are overweight have similar struggles, or that thin people have the same privilege that white people have had, and that it's similar experiences with overweight people versus black people. I think that's a little bit offensive to equate those things when we have so much evidence, and we've seen it for centuries, that black people have been oppressed. I think that's a little bit offensive to try to make it seem like those are similar experiences when they are not. They are completely different. So that's a little bit of my problem with the thin privilege idea. Do I think there is some truth to it? Yes. Do I think that we should be making it seem like it's equal to the way that, we have privilege with our color? No. I think that's a little bit problematic and a little bit offensive, in my opinion. So, the person was explaining thin privilege and the idea that people have different levels of thin privilege based on how thin they are. Which, there are grains of truth in it, but I don't agree with it as a whole. Completely, 100%. But I saw a comment where I think that this is exactly what I illustrated in my first video. This is the problem that I have with some people in the body positivity movement. So a comment I saw said, "Dear any people that say but thin women, fat women aren't going to make room for you and your thin friends in our political movement created by fat women for fat women. If you and your friends need validation, perhaps you should find your nearest model agency, catwalk, or any kind of establishment that will validate you solely on being a thin white woman." Okay, this is the problem that I have with the body positivity movement. Body positivity means body positivity. Being positive in all bodies. This comment is the exact problem that I have with body positivity. You are trying to exclude people based on their weight. You are saying, thin people, get out of here. Get out of here. You need to go find your model agency because all thin women are looked at as potential models. Just because somebody is thin, you don't know their story. You don't know what that person's been through. You don't know if they're thin because of an eating disorder, because of a health condition. They could be insecure because of their thinness. Just because somebody is thin doesn't mean that they're not allowed to be in the body positivity movement. This is the problem. This is the problem. And you're trying to say that because someone has thin privilege, that they're not welcome. They're not welcome in the body positivity movement. And also, I'd like to point out something. I like that this person said that it was a political movement created by fat women for fat women. You know who you're excluding, right, in that statement? You're excluding men. So that's another problem. You're excluding men from the body positivity movement. So nice going there. Good job. Congratulations. Body positivity should be for everybody, no matter what gender or sex. This is the exact problem I have with the body positivity movement. Stop excluding certain people because you think they have privilege. They should be allowed to have a voice too. So this person was responding to the comment I just read, and they put an arrow emoji and said, "This is the exact kind of BS my girlfriend goes through as a pretty thin femme girl who wishes she was anything but. Since everyone just tells her, oh, love yourself because the world wants your body, so you're not allowed to be self-conscious. But I think body positivity, self-acceptance doesn't have room for only this kind of person. And I'm realizing that belief means I don't belong in this community at all." And that's exactly how I feel, personally. They're making it feel like we're unwelcome because we're thin. We're not allowed to be in the body positivity movement because we have thin privilege. We're being supposedly treated differently and our bodies are represented in the modeling agency. I don't agree with the modeling agencies. I don't agree with the way they treat women. I don't subscribe to that mentality that people should be thin and should look a certain way. So I don't agree necessarily that thin privilege means that I'm not welcome in the body positivity movement. I think that's offensive and ridiculous. And then after that person's comment, the original commenter that I referenced commented back and they said this. They were commenting and saying that, yeah, you're not really welcome and she does have thin privilege, so therefore she's not really all that welcome. She's treated differently in society because she's thin. And then they also said, also, realizing you or your girlfriend don't belong in the community is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Does our job for us. And yes, thin white women are allowed and respected in body positive spaces, but only if they're willing to be allies. If me saying fat people won't make room for you makes you uncomfortable, you're not an ally. That's a contradiction. So you're saying thin white people are allowed in body positivity spaces, however, you're not making room for us? Which is it? Are thin white women allowed in body positive spaces, or are they not? Which is it? You can't say that they're not welcome, but that they're welcome. That doesn't make any sense. That's a contradiction. It basically sounds like you're saying that they're not welcome. You're going to pretend like they're welcome, but they're not. You're just going to insult them. This is the problem I have with body positivity. It makes it seem like it's celebrating, people who are overweight, which I think is great. I think it's great that we're accepting all bodies, but we should accept all bodies. Genetics plays a role. Some people can't help if they're thin. Some people can't help if they're overweight. You have to accept everybody. If you want to say you're body positive, you have to just be body positive. You can't shame some people for being one way and applaud some people for being another way. That's not helpful. You're hurting the movement. You're hurting the movement of body positivity by doing that. Because you're not being body positive. You're being fat accepting, which is great, but you're thin shaming. And that's a problem. You shouldn't be shaming anybody. You should be welcoming everyone. I kind of connect this a little bit to the social justice warriors type of thing, where they want to be politically correct, but with all the politically correct language and policing of everything, they start policing everyone and they start shutting everyone out, and it's a problem. And I've seen it where sometimes with marches that have gone on for people of color and trying to gain more rights for people of color, I've seen people say, no, white people can't even march with us. Go away. We don't want you. Because even if you're an ally, your people have oppressed us. So don't even attend the march. We don't want you. We don't want you as an ally. Go away. And I think that's a problem. And it reminds me a little bit of this, where it's saying, thin people, you're not welcome in the body positivity movement because we've seen your bodies in the media and portrayed as the ideal body, and so we don't want you because you have thin privilege. You're treated differently in society compared to overweight people. Is there some truth that thin people are treated differently than overweight people? Yes. Is it to the extent that black people are treated differently than white people? No. It's not the same. It's not similar. It's creating animosity towards thin people and creating hatred towards thin people and pitting them against each other and making it seem like if you're thin, you're the enemy. Get out. We don't want you. We only want overweight people in this movement. And that's not a body positivity movement. That's a fat acceptance movement, and a fat acceptance movement only. Because they're even saying that there are levels of thin privilege and that even people who are maybe a little bit overweight are still thin and still have thin privilege, so they're not really welcome either. And it's dividing people rather than uniting people. And I think that's a problem. I don't think a lot has changed really with what I had noticed when I filmed my first YouTube video. There is still a lot of thin shaming, and it clearly seems like there is some outright hatred towards thin people and telling them explicitly they are not welcome and that it's great that they feel like they're not welcome and that they feel uncomfortable. You honestly want that message perpetuated in the body positivity movement? Go ahead, but I don't think it's helpful. I think that's harming the body positivity movement. I don't know why you want to cause more harm. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's just going to continue to divide people. That's not going to unite anybody. So I think that that causes more harm than good. I'll see you guys in my next video. Comment down below with your thoughts. I'll put some links in the description to my Twitter, my blog, my Instagram. Come follow me, hang out, read my latest blog post, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.